Thank you. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate it very much. And yes, I got my MBA here at ETSU in 2000, so I am an alum. We're going to cover 3 topics today. Nonprofit public relations, marketing, and social media. That basically could be an entire semester worth. But we're going to do this in about 20 minutes. And we didn't even compare slides before, but everything Mary said was a great segue into what I'm going to talk about, because particularly the social networking aspect, which is what Deb asked me to kind of key in on this particular day, has so much to do with relational and relationship and engaging people, which were some of the words you heard Mary talking about. So let's go to the next slide, which is our goals. Number 1, this is the one we definitely want to get out of here with, which is we're going to talk about how social media and nonprofits are using social networking. And then if we get a chance, we're going to quickly highlight the 4 P's of marketing that you all talked about in the marketing mix just before we came in today. And then this is my own little addendum. How do I get a job in communications? My undergrad, by the way, was in communications, and I seem to get that call at least weekly from a college student. So if we get a chance, I'll at least steer you in the right direction on that one. So where did this all start? It started in Boston for me. In September 2008, I had already been active on LinkedIn, but I went to a conference in Boston in September 2008, put on by HubSpot, which is one of the leading marketing groups out there today. And at this seminar, we'll go to the next slide, I got to hear 2 of the leading thought leaders, Seth Godin and David Meerman Scott. Has anybody here heard of either of these guys? If you Google the word blog, Seth Godin comes up. He pretty much owns blog. To be that pronounced of a blogger is pretty impressive in today's society. But his blog is so well known, and basically, he keeps the content fresh. Every day he's coming out with something new and something interesting. David Meerman Scott wrote a book called The New Rules of Marketing and PR, and I commend it to each of you if you're interested in communications to read that book. And he's recently come out with a revision as well. And not only is it an excellent book, but what that does, and I'm just going to give you 2 definitions here today. You don't need to write a lot, but I am going to tell you kind of my paraphrasing of the definition. So let's go to the next slide. And that is that communications has moved from a system of outbound marketing, and this is what I learned at the Boston conference, and this is what David Meerman Scott emphasizes in his book. Outbound marketing is kind of that push out thing where we are forced to go to an appointment television, for example, where we have to sit in front of the news at 6:30, or certain things we have to look at a newspaper ad, because that's the way communications used to come at us. To today, where we're now in a system of inbound marketing, so that we pull in messages when we want them, where we want them, and how we want them. So do you see how it's all flipped on a pyramid from maybe a great big outbound push thing to now a much more refined, much more relational, as Mary was talking about, system of communicating with people? And do you agree that we get information when we want it, how we want it, where we want it? I usually see a lot of head nods on that one. It's changed. We don't want to wait for things. We won't even wait. I think it's gone from 5 seconds on a download to 3 seconds now. We're impatient. So we want the information when we want it. And that's how inbound marketing has changed, how marketing has changed to a system of inbound marketing. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I'm sure you guys were on a break a little bit earlier, and you were standing around either over the water cooler or the Coke machine, and you were talking. That's basic relationship, like Mary was talking about. You want to have the relationships with your donors and your friends here in class and so forth. So this is the oldest form of networking we know, right? Well, we've gone from that to now. Next slide, please. We're pumping it up on steroids. So we're taking the water cooler, pumping it up on steroids. And the next slide, please. We're at a cocktail party. Because we can now, instead of communicating just with one person and one avenue or one direct message, we can now talk to many. We can still engage one-on-one, but we can also have the ability to communicate with so many more than we used to, thanks to social networking. So likewise, as we communicate at a cocktail party, I encourage people to communicate in their social networking in a manner that, there's an old expression, if you're preacher, your parent, or your boss wouldn't approve, you probably wouldn't want to put it up. And believe me, I have lots of college friends on. Every time I go out and talk here, people want to connect with me, and that's great. But I see certain things people post that I would kind of wonder if an employer might question. But go ahead and move to the next slide, like this one. I don't know if you'd really want to put your 18 years old and you still suck your thumb. I might question that one. But at any rate, we do have to be a little cognizant of the fact that there's so many people out there now. And once that information goes out, you know what they say, once it goes out, it stays in Vegas? Yeah, right. And it stays on Flickr and it stays everywhere else. Okay, so the next slide. Let's talk about this just for a second since it's been so important here in the news recently. What's happened with Egypt and Facebook? What happened? Pardon me? Exactly. Facebook has been attributed with really helping in this revolution. And so next slide, we'll see. Someone even named, did you all hear this? Somebody in Egypt actually named their baby Facebook.
Oh, no.
Yes, oh yes. It has a full name, it is a little girl. It's not really this baby, I just thought that was a cute baby to put up there. But yes, but that's how much they think of this tool and how it's moved from, you know, maybe, well, obviously we know when Zuckerberg started it, it was initially a college fun kind of tool to now where you're talking about revolutions happening because of this communications tool. Okay, next slide. What about Charlie Sheen? What's Charlie Sheen up to these days, guys? Anybody know? Anybody follow Charlie? I'll admit it, I confess. He's, okay, he lost his job. Did somebody say that? Yeah, he did. And whether you like him or not personally, and that's not what this discussion's about, but he did an unbelievable thing. He got on Twitter at the 1st of March, so it hasn't even been a month yet, and he immediately set the Guinness World Record for followers. Within 25 hours, he had over 1 million followers, and now, this is interesting, I gave a talk, not the same talk, but something similar at Milligan a week ago Thursday, so just a little over a week's gone by, and he was at 2.8 million Twitter followers then. When I went last night to check on him, he was at 3.2 million followers. So, whatever you think of him, he's certainly using this communications mechanism to his advantage and to communicate. Okay, next. Oh, I thought you guys would get a kick out of this. He put out one tweet that said he was looking for a social media intern. This was the results he got. He posted this. He got 95,000 clicks, 181 countries, over 82,000 applications. From one thing where he says, one tweet, I'm looking for a social media intern. Isn't that amazing? So, that's a great question. Somebody asked if he's getting paid for it. I can tell you that he is definitely working with a group that's involved in getting paid. And I watched him on his Ustream video where he was holding a drink and he said, I'm not going to show you what this drink is because I want to get paid. I want to get endorsed. Now, if you're Charlie Sheen, you can do that. Obviously, you know, I wouldn't do that. Maybe a lot of you wouldn't be able to get paid to hold a drink in your hand, but when you're commanding that kind of viewership and that kind of interest, then yes, you're looking for endorsements. So now what about nonprofits? Because that's our subject today. You learned about the marketing mix earlier today, and if we get a chance, we'll touch on that. The marketing mix was the 4 Ps, remember? Did Deborah talk about that to you guys? Price, product, place, promotion. And I think they're still very important no matter what. You still have to have those 4 channels of marketing. But now you're in the social media marketing mix, where I found this on the internet, and it's interesting because my initial background was in journalism, and they're asking all the journalists questions pertaining to social media. And I think that's probably one of the reasons I love it so much is because journalists like to know who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those are our questions. And what are they asking here? Well, why use social media? How can you reach targeted audiences with your content? And then going where your audience is and pulling them back to you. So that's the pull that we talked about in inbound marketing. Then knowing what content gets attention, attraction, and pull. The who, finding people who want and need your service. So this is taking the traditional marketing mix, kind of beefing it up a little on steroids and giving it the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Okay, next slide, please. When I was asked to talk to a nonprofit class, I have done nonprofit work, as she's mentioned, but I wanted to see what the latest and greatest was, and I already knew Beth Cantor was considered the lead thinker in non-for-profit work. And that's something you want to do if you're interested in a communications career, or probably any career, but you want to follow the lead thinkers. And so I went out to see what Beth was doing recently in order to talk to you guys. And you would want to check out her blog, Beth Cantor's blog, and anything to do with Beth Cantor if you're interested in the latest social media and resources on not-for-profit. And she's talking about crowdsourcing. Well, I'd heard of crowdsourcing. Has anybody ever heard of crowdsourcing? Yeah, it was kind of like, well, what exactly is that? Well, it talks about measuring the impact of the crowd in funding and doing. And we'll go on and explain it in a little more detail, and I'm going to give you an exact definition per Beth, because I think that definition is very important for what you're learning. So the next slide, I just said, well, that sounds like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You've all heard of that one, right? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Meaning that, if we're shipwrecked, for example, I'd much rather be with you guys, all of you, because we'll figure out how to build a raft and get water, and than I would by myself. That's basically what the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So let's go to the next slide. Crowdsourcing, and I do think this is an important definition, so let's leave it here for a minute. It's the process of organizing many people to participate in a joint project, often in small ways. The results are greater than an individual or organization could accomplish alone. And in a minute, we're going to cue up a video related to this. Excuse me, I want them to go ahead and get this down now. So crowdsourcing is the process of organizing many people to participate in a joint project, often in small ways. The results are greater than an individual or organization can accomplish alone. Have you found that, Mary, in your work at not-for-profit? Have you used crowdsourcing or something similar to this concept? Many people?
Right, I have to use something similar. Not that term, but right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go ahead and this was a video I found called the Bone Marrow Challenge that I think exemplifies what crowdsourcing is. And then we're going to have a chance to talk about it in small groups too. What'd you think of that? Did it kind of,
I liked it.
What'd you like about it?
She told what she wanted, and she was pleasant about it. And she showed what had resulted from what she had done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts or comments on that one?
Make it personal, like giving a personal story.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's very good. That's a good point, and that works well in not-for-profit to have that personalized story. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Oh, I gave just a couple quick examples of some recent social media not-for-profit. Obviously, this is a really good one, right? I mean, you're seeing it a lot out there. The way that the American Red Cross is using, the texting and so forth to get contributions to Japan. And then the other one that I had up there is the Susan Komen. Mary mentioned I'm in shape. I really got into running back in August, and that was one of my earlier races with Susan Komen. But they do a fantastic job of, they give everybody their own web page and just the way they connect with you in so many different ways. These are actually the survivors who wear the pink shirts during that race. But those are just a couple examples I thought of. But what I wanted to do was, and I think now it's the next slide, have you guys break up into small groups and talk about companies you admire who are successfully using social media in their nonprofit work and why. And they don't have, they can be a company, or they can be a not-for-profit themselves, like the Susan Komen or Red Cross that I just used as examples. But why don't you break up, spend a couple minutes, and then come back, and we'll share those ideas, okay? Sound good? Let's go ahead then, and I'd love to hear from you. This is where I learn from you guys. So how about the table in the back? Why don't you go ahead and share first? Right? Absolutely, it makes me want to cry. I've got a puppy. That's something Mary and I share in common too. We have puppy dogs and talk about them. But yeah, that does. That's a real heart-wrenching one. Mm-hmm. Good. How about you, ladies?
Well, I would have someone that would have
Mm-hmm. Well, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, great example. Did you hear that about buying pounds for change and actually making a contribution for a pound of weight lost for people in need? Okay, good. Anything else? Are there any others you wanted to share?
I don't know the Red Cross and how they're everywhere, and then I have a standard children, so it's specific one. This is the, I guess, the reason for all of these people to go talk to, people and still, education. And they do really know about education. Letting people know what's going on, and people know what issues are, and they do a good job getting them there.
Okay, education issues, and that was who? What was the name?
Standard children.
Stanford Children. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks. Great examples. How about you guys in the back?
We were talking about the Sega Harvest Food Bank commercial with Matt Damon and his known some celebrity. I don't know who it is,
Mm-hmm.
but
They're really connected in with the celebrities, aren't they? They had, who came here and bagged the groceries recently locally? It was a celebrity, and now I'm drawing a blank. Yes, there you go. There you go. K+8 came and bagged groceries here locally, what, a week or two ago? Oh, yeah. Mhm. But, you know, the tie-in to celebrities, just what you're talking about. And are there any tie-ins back to social media in these in like the last two examples? She gave some, I think, but
I know one, and I can't think of what actual organization does it, but on
Mhm.
Facebook, like the City Girl Farmer things.
Right.
Like you can purchase special products, and it goes to the causes like Japan's relief,
mm-hmm.
which I think is interesting and creative.
Yeah, considering how many people are on there. Not me. I have too much else to do, but there's a whole lot of people on there. They're very popular. Yes. Any other examples from this table?
I like the YMCA, they have their own Facebook page for the Kingsfoot locations. If
Mhm.
there's like a snow closing, you can figure out about it before you go over there. Or if they're trying to raise some kind of money for something, they can put it up there and people respond to it.
Mhm.
Good numbers.
Do you work out at that YMCA?
I do.
Oh, good. Well, that's a good local example.
It gives them a good positive image because, you know, they make it down to earth on there and not all bulletin board, you know, flashy and that stuff.
Right, right. Okay, good, good. And how about this group?
We saw the locally, and we followed about the Mount State Self-Reliance. They've got advertisements everywhere. I mean, they've got signs up everywhere saying they're on Twitter and Facebook, and you can't go to the movies here in Johnson City without seeing their advertisement, and their billboards are all over town.
Right, right. Are there some specific, yeah, like maybe their children's hospital? I was trying to zone in on something specific that they do.
They broadcast, a lot of the time those advertisements focus on the future of the next one, or Children's Hospital, and they have a, like a nationally recognized art
Right,
board.
right. Yeah, and they are really good at getting that message out there. Excellent. Okay, any others? Okay, anybody else have anything to add on that one? These are all great examples. Thanks, guys. That was really good participation. Okay, what did I have up next? I think this was the quick broad brush. I've got a little comic up there. Can everybody read the comic or the cartoon? What do y'all think of that? I used it, excuse me. I used it to start a blog post. Go ahead, you can go to the next slide now. Yeah, the future man's just going, what? What is all this stuff you're talking about? But even though the people from the past might have been talking about the marketing mix, I just wanted to show you too that it's still important, and that's why I led the blog post on the marketing mix and the 4 Ps of marketing with that cartoon, because product, place, price, and promotion are still important, and I knew we'd be a little pressed for time right now, so I'm going to direct you to my blog post on it. But let's just real quickly, and you've already heard your professor talk about this as well, but what would be some of the important things about product in the marketing mix? And I'm not going to throw out definitions to you here, I just wanted to hear your input. You have to have a product, right? Either you have a product or you have a service. In my case, my product is my service, because I'm a service industry, so I help business professionals build their personal brand. And I was glad to see you alluded to personal brand. You didn't say the word personal brand, but you talked about the importance and that you carry around that image wherever you go, and that's building your personal brand. That's what I do. That would be my product, which is actually a service. But if you don't have that, then you really don't have anything to go on. So you're either going to have a product or a service. Place has to do with your distribution channels, you know, where you are. For me, as it's turned out in my business, it's ended up being my geographic location for the most part. My clients have mostly been around this area. I didn't know that when I first started because what I do could really go anywhere. I could help anybody in all locations, but I found it helps to have that business background that she mentioned and to know people locally. That's ended up how I've been able to get business. Price, obviously that's going to be key. You got to make a profit or you're not going to stay in business. You got to price it just right. Likewise, you don't want to price gouge, so you know, you just work to set your price. One good way, you know, it's great if you try to find out what's the going rate for what you're selling is in the market. And then promotion, your sales, your marketing, you know, getting out your name, promoting yourself. And that really has, for me, from the time I started my business at the end of February 2 years ago, I've used social media. The vast majority of my promotion has been through social networking channels. In fact, I need to use some of the more old ones too, like email newsletter. That's on my goal list, remember, Mary? Which that still works well too. People still do respond to email. Okay, and you can read more about that on my blog. And then the next slide, how do I get a job in PR? And then we'll get this wrapped up, but just very quickly, and I went into a lot more detail when I was able to talk about it in more detail, but where I can tell you to go is to my blog, but we can go to the next slide. I want to show you my intern because she's an ETSU student. Her name is Sarah Williams. Anybody know Sarah? Yay. I think that internships are important, but I'll give you actually 10 other tips on my blog. And I put that post up last week. I usually change it every week, but I didn't have a chance to change it yesterday because I was just coming off spring break. But that post about, I called it 11 tips from a PR pro, how to get a job in public relations. That post has gotten more hits and more retweets and more. I've just been really amazed by the number of particularly students like you that were interested in that blog post. So if you want to read that, I suggest you go there. And my last slide is all the ways to connect with me. Feel free to connect with me any way you want. My business page is Marketing Mel PR, or I notice a lot of students like to connect with me personally, or LinkedIn, Twitter's Marketing Mel is my handle. And then there's, like I said, good old-fashioned email. So feel free to connect with me, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoyed it.